The female lead tells women's stories. Remarkable, diverse, inspiring. An educational charity promoting positive female role models who show the many different routes to success and fulfillment.
So often I hear people saying, oh, how do I get started? How do I do this? How do you do it? You just start. You have to begin. And it won't be perfect and it'll be messy and it'll be hard, but you're doing something and you're on your way.
Empowering future generations of women through films and a book of 60 women donated to 18,000 schools in the UK and USA, reaching millions of young people. And through our female lead societies, we help girls to discover new role models that speak to their passions, ambitions and careers. Through our research into social media and mental health, we found a solution to the negative impact of social media on teen girls. Through a simple intervention which encouraged girls to follow different influencers, we were able to change their entire social media experience and sense of well-being. We called this campaign Disrupt Your Feed, and it reached 20 million people on social, with 330 million impressions all over the globe. So what's next? As well as inspiring girls, we're now finding ways to measurably improve the lives of older women through data, research, and the stories of those who have overcome challenges and found their own personal versions of success. We're a long way from being finished. Join us in our mission.
Are we going to talk about women's rights again? Yes, we're going to talk about it until there's balance.
Hello, welcome everyone. Welcome to the Female Lead LinkedIn Live. We're going to be talking about how to build mental fitness. And to do that, I have the very resilient, lovely Amy Yip here today with us. Welcome, Amy.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I understand that you are in Croatia right now, but we'll come back to that. So I'm just going to say a few words of introduction. It's lovely to have everyone signing in from all over the world, and our guests are often in very disparate parts. So always exciting to see that. I'm Edwina Dunn. I'm founder of the Female Lead. It's a charity that showcases amazing, diverse women who are shaping the world today. So we're going to be talking about building mental fitness. My understanding of this is, if you're not physically fit, you get stressed if you start to climb a hill or a mountain. If you're not mentally fit, then you feel things like anxiety and frustration or unhappiness or, handling work or personal life challenges just becomes a bit too much. So I hope, Amy, that you're going to help us unpack all of this and that you're going to talk to us about 3 very important core muscles that are part of mental fitness, and also how to take mastery of our own minds. And just before we do that, my first question, just say a few words. You're a certified life transformation and mental fitness coach. Yep. You work with women all over the world, and you've also led teams, global teams at Google, Booz Allen and Clorox, amazing companies. And you did leave your corporate world to head off to Ghana with your husband to volunteer at a breast cancer nonprofit. And then COVID hit. So you have had to practice some of this, I have no doubt. So, Amy, Let me start by asking you a question. Can I just remind everyone, I get Amy for a while, and then you can ask your questions. So please do send those in, and we will ask Amy towards the end of the session. So my first question is a really basic one, which is, what is mental fitness, please?
Mental fitness is your capacity to respond to life's challenges with positive rather than negative mindset. So a way to think about this is the strength of your positive mental muscles, which is in the thriving sage side of the brain, versus the negative, which is the surviving saboteur brain. And there are two different sides. And the measure of your mental fitness is called positive intelligence quotient. And the concept of mental fitness, as we're going to be talking about it today, is based on the research called positive intelligence conducted by Shirzad Sharmain.
And we'll send a link to that or
Yes.
mention it, so that people can find that afterwards. Brilliant. So why, I mean, it's an obvious question, but I'm going to ask it. Why does mental fitness actually matter?
So when you have mastery over your mind, you can tackle your greatest challenges with calm, clarity, creativity, laser focused action. You can even think about it as when someone is playing basketball or sport and you have the basketball, the timer goes off, and this is the game-winning shot. Do you go into saboteur mode, which says, oh my gosh, if I miss this, everyone's going to get upset with me? Or sage mode, where you play with joy and you say, I am so lucky, I'm going to make this, things are going to be wonderful. And that's the difference between having mental fitness or not. And it supports lasting change. Like if you think about it, why is it that so many of us want to change but struggle with it? And it's because change, it's only 20% comes from insight and knowledge. 80% comes from mental fitness and mental mastery. And that's why mental fitness makes such a big difference.
And I guess we have to practice that. And maybe you can help us think about, some of the ways to do that. But before we get there, maybe, could you explain to us, this idea of 3 core muscles and why they all behave differently and why, I guess we need to exercise muscles. Is that right?
Yeah. So just like physical fitness, your mental fitness has to be exercised. You go to the gym every day and you build those muscles. And it's the same with mental fitness. So through the research, through factor analysis, the PQ research has found that there are 3 core muscles behind mental fitness, and it's saboteur interceptor, sage perspective, and self-command. So those are, and I know it doesn't make sense to everyone here, and we can definitely dive deeper into these, but these are the 3 core muscles that help you to build mental fitness.
So can you help me understand how those 3 sort of interact and how they behave differently? Because it almost suggests there's just this very fine divide between feeling positive and just feeling, really low.
Yeah. And in order to dig into these, it's helpful to understand the difference between the survivor brain. So it's the survivor brain is where all the saboteurs live. And then there's this other side, which is the thriving brain, where our sage lives. So the difference between these two, the survivor brain, it ensures our survival at the basic level. If you think back to caveman, cavewoman days, it helps you keep safe from the saber-toothed tiger. So it is constantly assessing and judging situations and looking for signs of danger to keep you safe. And it's where our saboteurs live. It represents your brain's automatic mental habits with limiting beliefs and assumptions about how to handle life's challenges. And the thing is, we all have saboteurs who generate a lot of the negativity in the way that we respond to challenges. So stress, anxiety, self-doubt, frustration, anger, guilt, like I could keep going on. And through the research, what it's found is that on this survivor side of the brain, we essentially have 10 saboteurs. We have the judge, which I'm sure many people are familiar with. We have the controller, the hyperachiever, the stickler, the pleaser, the avoider, the victim, the restless, the hypervigilant, and the hyper-rational. So there's 10 different ways that we might self-sabotage, and it's motivated by these negative emotions, and it tells you you're not going to be happy until. And so then you have the thriving side of the brain. And this is where the sage lives. Your sage lives.
Great. Sorry, Amy, we missed a bit of that. Could you just start with the other one, not the saboteur, the other one?
The sage.
The sage, that's the one.
Yeah. So you have in the thriving side of the brain is where your sage lives, and this is if you put your brain under an MRI scan, you will see two different sides. So there are actually living in two different regions of your brain, and it handles challenges differently. It produces positive emotions like empathy and creativity, curiosity, passion. I mean, if you think about moments when you're in flow, you're in the sage side of the brain, and so. And so mental fitness essentially is the strength between the positive sage muscle, so where that side lives, versus the negative, where the saboteurs live.
And is the idea that we keep these in balance in some way, or do we want one side to dominate the other side?
So the way to think about the survival brain, it's like having your hand on a hot stove. It's good to know, but for how long? And oftentimes we keep our hand on the hot stove. So the idea is, okay, saboteur, survival brain, my hand's on the hot stove. Now what? Now I want to shift into sage mode and decide how do I take my hand off the hot stove? Being able to process that my hand is on the stove and decide, what do I want to do next? So that's kind of the metaphor that I often use.
And then you mentioned another core muscle as well. Where does that fit in? Is that the self-command or?
Yeah, so in terms of the three muscles, how we want to build it, the first one is the saboteur interceptor. So there are essentially the 10 different saboteurs, the judge and the 9 accomplice saboteurs that I mentioned. And they are motivated by these negative emotions. And so, and one example is hyperachiever saboteur, which I have. I have the hyperachiever saboteur, and it will tell me, you will not be happy until you achieve this next thing. So guess what I do? I'm constantly trying to achieve. I climb this mountain. I'm up at the top of the mountain. I'm happy for like a few minutes, and then I'm off to achieve my next thing. And so the key here with this muscle, the saboteur interceptor, is to recognize. And I had posted a link to the assessment, and we can do this again after. It's at positiveintelligence.com. But you can go there, you could take a free assessment to see what are your top saboteurs. It gives you a description of the feelings, the thoughts, and the lies that it tells you, like you'll be happy when. And it essentially, by being aware of the top saboteurs that you have, it's almost like being able to catch a bandit. You know, you have all of the signs, and awareness is the first step to it. So that's the saboteur interceptor. The second core muscle is the sage perspective. And as I mentioned, the sage lives in a different part of your brain. And so the sage perspective is really about being able to say, every outcome or circumstance can be turned into a gift and opportunity, even if it's not obvious in the moment. So right now with the pandemic, politics all over the world, we can all say, okay, this is a horrible situation. I can't wait till it's over. I can't wait till 2020 is over. I've heard that so many times, like, you know, can we just get rid of 2020? Can we just go into the next year? And a different way of looking at it, the sage perspective is, what is the gift or opportunity in the situation? And can I see that? And the thing is, 80% of what we call our experience is getting generated from the information that's inside our heads. So it's our perspective. Only 20% is generated from the actual circumstances. So the question here for everyone, and if there's one thing that you take away from today, it's, can you choose to see the gift and opportunity in your circumstance?
Mm-hmm.
And we don't have time to go into the story. There's a really great story about the farmer and his stallion, and it gives great perspective on being able to see the gift and opportunity no matter what happens. I highly encourage everyone to Google the story of the farmer and his stallion to look at it. But it gives great perspective on being able to see things as there's a gift and opportunity in every circumstance. And so if after today, there's only one thing that you leave with, it's being able to ask yourself, what is the gift and opportunity in this? Can I choose to see that?
And I suppose now more than ever, we need that. We need to celebrate what we have got, despite all the things that we can't do. And, you know, for so many people, they feel like their life's on hold.
Yes.
So finding that must be a really beautiful gift.
Yes.
And one that I guess we'll remember a long time after this.
Yeah. And Albert Einstein has a quote that I love, and it's, the most important decision we make is whether we believe we live in a friendly or a hostile environment. Mm-hmm. You know, yeah. And so and he says it's a decision. So what do you decide?
Yeah. Yeah. No, and I think that's very much the mindset attitude, isn't it? Which is just how you see exactly where we are now. I suspect there will be a lot of questions about how do we do that. So maybe as I tee up opening this up to other people, maybe I can say to you, can you just start giving us a few thoughts and ideas on how we can exercise our mental fitness and how we can start to put on this more sort of positive mindset?
Yes. So the first step is saboteur, interceptor, recognizing your saboteur. Second step is the sage perspective and knowing there's a sage perspective. The third mental muscle is the self-command muscle. And the question that I pose to everyone is, who thinks that, do you believe that you are in control of your own mind? And if you do, how many of us are living in anxiety, frustration, restlessness, shame, anger, which you know doesn't serve you? And if you were in control of your mind, would you still live in all of this? And you wouldn't choose to be stressed or anxious. And so what's happening for most of us is that you're not running your mind is running you. So the third muscle is the self-command muscle. And this is being able to observe and recognize when you're in saboteur mode, and then commanding your mind to shift. And shall we do a practice? A quick 10-second practice?
Yeah, let's.
Okay. So take 2 fingertips like this, and whichever two fingertips.
Oh, fingertips.
Mm-hmm, 2 finger. Two
okay.
I can't find my camera. So rub them against each other with such a tension that you can feel the fingertip ridges against each other. So gently rub the 2 fingertips against each other with such a tension that you feel the fingertip ridges against each other. So that was 10 seconds. And if we were to place your head under an MRI machine, what you would notice is actually those 10 seconds ever so slightly quieted the side where your saboteurs live. And they started activating the region where your sage lives. And that was 10 seconds. That's just one PQ rep or building the muscle. So it's like if you had a dumbbell and that's 1 rep. Yeah. And that won't change everything. But if you did a lot of reps, imagine how many muscles, what kind of a Jedi warrior you would turn yourself into.
Because it must be good to relax your mind when you're in anxiety mode. It must be very, very tiring, that constant worry. I mean, we all sometimes,
Yeah.
we'll go to sleep and worry about something in our sleep because we've not relaxed it before we go to sleep. I speak from great experience. Suddenly wake up in the middle of the night and go, I have to do this. It's urgent. And then don't go back to sleep.
Yes.
Anyway.
And nobody chooses to say, oh my gosh, 3 a.m. I want to wake up myself up and worry about this thing.
It just takes you over, doesn't it? I love the idea of self-command mode, because for me, the female lead is about taking the lead in your own life. So that resonates really strongly and deeply with me. But, let us throw this open to everybody now for some questions. So here we go. How much do we have to keep working at this each day?
So ideally, for one, there are lots of different ways to do this. So the finger rubbing is just one. You can do breathing ones, you can do visual ones. So there's a lot of different ways, but the minimum is 36 reps per day. So what we just did was 10 seconds, and that was 1 rep.
And where do we find these? Do we make them up, or do we find these reps somewhere?
So there is actually an entire program, Positive Intelligence. You can learn all about it. You can either reach out to me or you can go to positiveintelligence.com. There's an entire program dedicated, a lot of research put behind this on doing this.
Great. Okay. Kwame asks, if someone has a problem seeing opportunity and challenge, how do you help them?
So it's about not necessarily, for one, it's helping them to shift from the saboteur mode into the sage mode. If you are in the saboteur mode, you won't be able to see the opportunity. And it just depends on what the problem is and how deep it is. And even when there's a lot of grief, and this is something that a lot of people have asked before, when there's a lot of grief, how do you deal with it? And if you think about it, so Mothers Against Drunk Driving, it's a nonprofit in the United States, Canada, and I think Brazil, but it was founded by a woman after her 13-year-old daughter was killed by a drunk driver. And she decided, I want to do something to reduce drunk driving and deaths as a result. So she had a choice at that moment, and we call it like a fork in the road. So do I decide I want to sit in this pain, or do I want to find the gift and opportunity in it? Depending on the problem itself, it's not going to be easy right away. So building the mental muscles first, and helping them do the PQ reps, and it's just like physical fitness. You can start with lighter weights of challenges, and then as you build your muscle, you can lift heavier weights. You can't expect someone to go to the gym for the first time and lift 50 pounds or 50 kilos.
It's funny, isn't it? Because in business, you do SWOT analysis. You do this. Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. It's almost like we could learn a little bit from the corporate world about, it's quite a nice little model, that. And
I love that.
Simple thinking. Yeah.
I love that.
Great. Sarah, how can we deal with ambiguity, which puts the survivor's brain on and affects decision making?
Can you do it? Ambiguity, which puts the survivor's brain on and affects decision making. So the key here is, one, recognizing when you're in survivor mode. And you typically recognize when you're in survival mode when you're feeling a lot of negative emotions, because survival mode is about like danger, what's happening, and it's a lot of fear and anger, or you go into a fight, flight, freeze mode. And so when you recognize you're in that mode, do PQ reps to bring yourself back into a more calm sage mode. And you can do 10 seconds, you can do 20 seconds. The other thing to note is that we did 10 seconds here. And for those who might be into mindfulness and meditation, there's a similarity, because what it does is it switches off one side of your brain, turns on the other side, and brings you into the present mode. Meditation is a form of PQing. But the great thing about the PQ reps is you can be in a meeting and rub your two fingers and bring yourself back into the present. Whereas if you were in a meeting, you couldn't really say, hey, I'm not doing this. I need to go for like a 10 minutes. You can put your fingers together and try to bring yourself into the present.
To Sarah's question, is there a pattern, when you're in that mode? Are you like very defensive and aggressive when you're making decisions, or does it just depend on the person? Can you almost hear what you're doing when you're in that mode?
So each person responds very differently. And it truly depends on which of your saboteurs you have. So for example, if you are a controller, or you have the controller saboteur, your response might be different than someone who has a victim saboteur or a pleaser saboteur. So it truly depends. And that's why it's important to take the assessment, to learn about how you tend to self-sabotage and what your voices say to you. And that helps you to recognize, okay, what am I doing and how do I typically respond? And even when you're working with other people in teams, like this work can be done with teams, knowing each other's is very helpful. Like I have the controller saboteur. My husband has an avoider saboteur. So just even recognizing that helps in our personal relationship.
Yeah, you almost smile as you say them, because you recognize people just from the words that come. Your saboteur. Yeah. I know. Lovely. I think there was another one. Yes, Elena, the female lead. How can we promote building mental fitness in our team, both as leaders and as a team member?
I'm happy to connect with you on that. Mental fitness is something that it has to come from the leader. When a leader is, and most things have to come from the leader. When the leader is bought in, when the leader says this is important for our entire team and sets the example, then everyone else will be much more likely to be on board.
I wonder sometimes, I am an optimist. I'm sometimes a horrible optimist. I've been called a naive optimist at times. Is it annoying when someone is just overly optimistic and they're not paying enough attention to all the danger and warning signs around them? Is that equally aggravating?
Depends aggravating for who. But
probably for my team.
I would say it depends. It depends on the individual, because if I were someone who looked at everything as if there's danger, and you're just like everything's positive and wonderful, then I might be annoyed. But if I'm also a positive person, then I might see the same perspective that you do. And that's why the perspective makes such a big difference of understanding each other. And how do you typically respond? How do I respond? And how do we dance together?
And balance each other, probably. Great. Do we have another question? Could you show one other exercise, please?
Sure. So this one, if you can feel your toes, notice all 10 of your toes, and just wiggle your toes and see if you can feel all your beautiful toes. And that's 10 seconds.
This is the time we can do it, because none of us have our shoes on. It's not like when we sat opposite each other and had to be polite. We all have our shoes off now, which is heavenly. Yes.
And another one is and noticing the breath going deep into your abdomen and then breathing out, and noticing the temperature as it enters and exits your nostrils, and doing that. really paying attention to, the temperatures, the sensations rising and falling of your chest or stomach.
And so this calms us, but how does it switch on our other brain? That's what I still don't get. So it stops us thinking about danger.
Mm-hmm.
But the gap, the silence, I guess, allows something else to come in. It's quite intriguing. I find it fascinating.
Yeah, so you go from the knowing you're in saboteur mode. So, which are my top saboteurs? I'm in saboteur mode. I need to get out of it. But a lot of times when we're in it, it's hard because you're just spiraling. And so do the PQ exercises, whatever you need. And depending on the problem or the situation you're in, if it's super intense, you might need to do more than 10 seconds. You'll probably need to do a few minutes or maybe 10 or 15 minutes. And then at that point, go to the sage perspective and ask the question, what's the gift or opportunity in this situation?
Okay. Yeah. Great.
And that's at a very high level.
Yeah. Brilliant. Well, I suspect there is a bit more to it than we are able to touch on. This is probably going to have to be our last question, Amy, but what are your top self-care tips during the holiday? What a great, lovely question for this time of year.
The main one is to recognize, well, two things. One is self-care is not selfish, and recognizing that self-care can span a variety of things. So some people believe that self-care is just about bubble baths and pedicures and manicures. It could be, but it could be a variety of other things. And then the last piece I want to add is that there are 5 dimensions of self-care. There's not just one, there's 5 dimensions. There's the physical self-care, there's emotional, there's mental, there's spiritual, and there's social. And so recognizing where in this self-care dimension you need and or you feel more empty, and focus on that.
Wow, we have a lot of dimensions to us, don't we? We're complex creatures, yeah. And we have to look after ourselves. We're precious, complex creatures. Well, look, thank you so much for that. Thank you very much, Amy, for sharing what is clearly a very smart and incredibly important science. And I think we all very much want to be mentally healthy and mentally fit. So thank you. I think we have another LinkedIn Live next week. We're just waiting for confirmation, but we have, we hope, a very exciting guest who's made a big ripple, if not wave, in the industry. We're just making sure the timings work. So keep a lookout for Wednesday, the 9th of December. Until then, thank you all very much for joining us. And thank you to Amy for sharing your wisdom with us.
Thank you. Have a great holiday.
Thank you. And you.